listening to the Blue Raider Podcast, presented by Gold's Gym of Tennessee. Your all-access pass to everything Middle Tennessee sports, game recaps, player spotlights, and the latest from the heart of Blue Raider Nation. Now, here's your host, Jay Golden.
Welcome back into the Blue Raider Podcast. In today's special Tuesday episode where we go behind enemy lines, we will be joined by our friends over at the 700 Pelham Road Podcast to preview the Gamecocks and their road matchup here in Murfreesboro tomorrow night. But before we do that, we have to thank today's sponsor. Today's episode is sponsored by Gold's Gym of Tennessee, and the new year is coming, and so are your resolutions. So Gold's Gym of Tennessee is here to help you hit the ground running with brand new month-to-month pricing starting November 1st. And the best part, there's no fees, ever. So pick the plan that fits your crew. You can go gold for one member at $25 bi-weekly, or you and your partner can upgrade to the VIP, which is $35 billed bi-weekly, or you and your family, good enough for 3 members, is just $45 bi-weekly. And here's another perk. All the memberships include access to all 16 Gold's Gym locations. So whether you're lifting, spinning, or training for a brand new you, they've got you covered with all of their locations across the state of Tennessee. So don't wait for January 1st to start your resolution today. Join online or stop by your local Gold's Gym of Tennessee and kick off the new year with no fees and full access to fitness. Gold's Gym of Tennessee. Stronger starts now. Joining us now on the Blue Raider Podcast, it is the co-host of the 700 Pelham Road Podcast, our Jacksonville State representative over at the Conference USA Podcast Roundtable. It is Caleb William. Caleb, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk with me about the game.
Yeah, man, I'm excited about this Jacksonville State team. One, going into this year, I don't think many people thought Coach Kelly would have this level of success. You're one of the 2 undefeated teams going in Conference USA, still going along with Kennesaw State. I think, and I guess maybe you give me more of your own insight. Are you surprised at how good this Jacksonville State team has looked in conference?
Not in conference, no. I mean, I always knew that our out-of-conference schedule was loaded, and we knew that if we even managed to split those 4 games, that we'd be in good shape. But no, in conference, I felt pretty good just because we had a light start to the conference slate. But you got to give credit to where credit's due with Coach Kelly. Everywhere he's coached, he's coached for some legends: Jimbo Fisher, Nick Saban, Deion Sanders. And even Hugh Freeze, who, although he hasn't been great at Auburn, that's another great recruiter. Charles Kelly knows how to get talent, and he knows how to coach them up. So, I'm not shocked that we're playing well. I am shocked we're undefeated, though. But, hey, I'm glad, it gives us something to really look forward to going in November.
Well, let's build that Conference USA resume up a little bit. It's been a minute since Jacksonville State has played. I believe it's 2 weeks coming to the kickoff on Wednesday since you played that last Conference USA midweek game at home against Delaware, where you essentially dominated, forced a lot of turnovers against the Blue Hens and capitalized on them with scores. And so that's a 38-25 win. You had a close call on the road at Sam Houston the week prior. And then going all the way back to week 2, you defeated a Liberty team who at that time was a really good win, but Liberty really has kind of fallen from grace as that top team in Conference USA, but you still got a good win over them. You talked about the non-conference slate. You talked about a close loss week 1 against UCF, a road loss at Georgia Southern, a road loss at Southern Miss. Again, those are quality opponents that you're playing in the non-conference. But when you look at this resume and what's ahead for Jacksonville State, I guess it sounds like you're pretty much shooing yourself in or putting yourself in for that Conference USA championship, because really, other than a Kennesaw State matchup in mid-November and an end-of-year matchup with Western Kentucky, you're kind of playing for the playoff that is the Conference USA championship later in the year.
Yeah, we've set ourselves up pretty well. You mentioned that Liberty game. Even in a down year, they're dangerous. They can beat anyone any given week. And that's honestly, I think that's the best we've looked all season. Was that week? You mentioned Delaware. They're a tough squad. They're a lot like we were our first year in FBS. They win some games they're not supposed to. Um, the games they lose, they're not getting blown out. So, going into, this week and then moving forward into November, yeah, we've set ourselves up well. Um, but I will say I haven't chalked ourselves into the championship game yet. Um, I just think there's too many variables at play. Um, too many things that can go wrong. The last I think 5 games of the year, and just don't want to take anything for granted yet.
Well, the one story, obviously, Rich Rod heading back to West Virginia. You graduate Tyler Huff, who was a Conference USA Offensive Player of the Year. Trey Stewart was the conference MVP last year. So two studs in the backfield running that RPO for Rich Rod. And now you have Cam Cook, the TCU transfer, who is essentially a shoe-in for Conference USA MVP this year. The one question mark, I guess if you consider it a question mark still, is the quarterback play. You had Gavin Wimsatt, the transfer from Kentucky. You've made the switch to Caden Creel. Last time out against Delaware, had a little bit of a scare, hyperextension of that non-throwing arm. The status that keeps coming across to me anyways is the x-rays were negative. They were kind of precautionary when all that happened because it looked pretty bad. But I guess as it sounds, he's going to be a go this week. But this backfield, I feel like the Gamecocks haven't missed a beat with this duo of Creel and Cook. Again, one of the highest rush attempt teams in all of college football. They just kind of move the ball at will on the ground.
Yeah, and when Clint Trickett was brought in as offensive coordinator, it was a clip where he went to go meet John Gruden and give him a pack of JSU stuff. And the first question he asked that Gruden asked Trickett was, "You guys still going to run the zone read?" And he just said yes. Like that's still our offense is zone read. Obviously not going quite as fast as we did, but Caden Creel, even Gavin Wimsatt, great athletes. Cam Cook, the nation's leading rusher, and that's with 2 bye weeks already. Um, and I'll be honest, I don't see anyone catching up. I think after the Delaware game last week, he had like a 150-yard lead um, on the fourth place rusher and a 75-yard lead on the second place rusher. It's a huge gap. So yeah, haven't missed a beat. Different offense, but same result. We're just running it down teams' throats and really don't care if they can stop it or not.
Yeah, I make the joke all the time that Jacksonville State is as close to Army, who runs the triple option, as you can get without running the triple option. I mean, they put the ball on the ground, and like you said, it doesn't matter. Like they're going to do that until it doesn't work. And if that's 3 yards in a cloud of dust, that seems to be the offense that they like to run. But I asked about Cam Cook because he's one that's taken the conference by storm. He was no surprise to us on the Conference USA podcast roundtable, picked as our preseason favorite for offensive MVP. And you already touched on, I mean, he's having the season that I think you all really expected him to have. And as long as he's healthy, I think, again, talk about a shoe-in for the second straight MVP out of Jacksonville State.
Yeah, he's a stud. Former 4-star recruit. And TCU, they've liked to run the football a lot. That's kind of who they've been. Even with Sonny Dykes, they've wanted to run the football and establish the ground game. And I'll be honest, I think it's a credit to Charles Kelly and his evaluation and his recruiting ability that he even got Cam Cook on campus, because he could go a lot of places and start at the Power 5 level. So yeah, we're thankful to have him. Absolutely, absolutely phenomenal running back. I really expect that we'll see him on Sundays at some point. He's just that good, not just as a home run threat, which he is, but an excellent guy between the tackles who can, grind out 3 or 4 yards.
Let's talk about the quarterback situation. Assuming Caden Creel is a go, what are your thoughts on him and his ability to run the offense? I think one thing that is nice about running the zone read, as cerebral as it may seem, it does kind of dumb it down a little bit for the quarterback as the guy that has to make a solo read. What's your confidence level in Creel leading this offense for the rest of the way?
I'll probably go with safe, like 6.5. I think the concern, just like it was with Gavin Wimsatt, is just we're not pushing the ball downfield very much, and when we do so, it's not very efficient. But you don't have to do it much when you're running the ball at the clip we are. Um, and from that standpoint, I think he's a little bit more proficient running zone read than Wimsat was. I think his reads are a little bit cleaner. Um, obviously the health is going to be a concern because you imagine the first time he takes off, someone's going to want to get a free shot on that off arm. Um, but but as a whole, yeah, I think he's well equipped to run the offense. I think Coach Trickett for the most part has put him in a good place to succeed um, when he's on the field. He hasn't really asked him to do too much. It's mostly a lot of zone read, um, quick game, and screens. Really, not a lot of downfield stuff. And if we can stay ahead of the chains, we won't have to do any more than that.
Thoughts on Jacksonville State? Because going into this game, they haven't necessarily faced a prolific run defense in Conference USA. Talk about Liberty and Delaware and Sam Houston. Those are three of the bottom four teams in Conference USA in rush defense, where MTSU kind of brings to the table a top three rush defense in CUSA. Are there concerns that now I would say you're facing a good defensive front that you haven't faced yet, and kind of really see that kind of test this offense for the first time in conference play?
I mean, I don't know if concern is the right word. You always just kind of understand week to week. Eventually, you're going to face a defense that's better than the ones you faced before, right? I mean, it's just kind of the nature of the beast in this conference. Everyone really has the same level of talent. It's really just a matter of execution. And I got to give credit to MTSU. Like you said, really, really good run defense. They really do a good job of forcing you to beat them on the perimeter, which plays really against what our strength is. Um, but Coach Trickett, he's got a real multiple run game because it's not just inside zone over and over again. He'll show you some counter, he'll show you some power read, he'll show you some jet sweep, stuff like that. He'll get the ball in a bunch of guys' hands, um, fairly often. So yeah, I don't know if concern is the right word, but certainly it'll probably be a more diverse game plan than it has been the last few weeks. Be really interesting to see how they do early in the game, and then I guess we'll go from there.
Who are some of the offensive threats outside of Cook and Creel that Blue Raider fans should keep an eye on?
So unfortunately, he's not healthy. Otherwise, I'd say Michael Petway, who this coming into the year was going to be our starting slot. Just he's been dealing with a fractured kneecap all year, which, to be honest, in the slot, if you can't cut, you basically can't play. So outside of him, you got to go Brock Rexsteiner. He's our ex receiver, real good player, physical, has home run ability after the catch, and we saw that a lot last year. He is also the son of legendary Wrestling Hall of Famer Scott Steiner, for those of you who are WWE fans. So little shout out to him. I'll also point to Andrew Paul, second running back in the room. He's been dealing with some health problems, but he's, again, another 4-star guy. Started at Georgia, really, really talented player. Just kind of been buried behind, like you mentioned, two really good running backs the last 2 seasons.
Well, let's change this conversation over to the defensive side of the ball. Again, when you're talking about how prolific this offense is, although they do run the football a lot, but that kind of plays into the defense's hands, because I would imagine the stat on time of possession falls way in the favor of Jacksonville State because of their ability to keep the ball on the ground and run the clock. But this defense, tell me your overall feelings on the defense. Do you think that this defense, we know the offense is championship caliber. Do you feel the same way about the defense?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I mean, the defense really has won every game we've won this year. I think the defense has been one of the key reasons why. I mean, even against Delaware, we had a scoop and score, and then another fumble that was returned inside the 5, which I think 2 plays later was punched in for a touchdown. So they were directly responsible for 14 of those points. Against Liberty, 3 turnovers, right? This is a team that's very opportunistic on defense. They create turnovers in bunches, and it's one of those defenses where when it rains, it pours. They're gonna pick up 4 turnovers before they pick up 1. That's just kind of how it goes. Um, Now, I'll also say this: I think outside of Georgia Southern, I don't think we faced a truly, you know, explosive offense yet. I don't, Liberty kind of really kind of back to that old triple option style where they've just kind of had to run it and just kind of keep the chains moving. UCF not that explosive. Southern Miss not that explosive, and really obviously Delaware, kind of a 3 yard in a cloud of dust kind of offense. I do get concerned about our secondary. But I mean, front seven, I just don't know if there's a front seven in the conference, really, besides MTSU and Delaware, that has this kind of turnover potential.
Tell me the losses. You talked about the one there with Georgia Southern. Outside of the loss at Georgia Southern, at Southern Miss, you allow 41 and 42 points there, respectively. Walk me through those games, if you can, in a short bit. Like what happened in those games that allowed those opposing offenses to get such high scoring totals? Because outside of those, you're not allowing more than 25, 27 against Sam Houston.
Yeah, it's turnovers. I mean, there's to no other way to explain it. If you look at the defensive game log, Georgia Southern, we gave up 410 yards. Wait, sorry, I was looking at the offense there. I need to be looking at the defensive game log. No, yeah, so 410 yards to Georgia Southern, gave up just 377 to Southern Miss. Like be honest, we don't give up a ton of yards um, on offense. In fact, our highest um, allowed yardage has been Delaware and Liberty, games that we won by multiple scores. Um, so really, biggest issue is we turned the ball over a lot, gave Southern Miss and Georgia Southern short fields to work with, and they took advantage of them.
Certainly something to keep an eye on about those turnovers. And I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself when we talk about our next segment here, sponsored by Trevor Haggard at State Farm. Because when life happens, you want someone in your corner who actually knows your name. And that's where Trevor Haggard State Farm comes in. Whether it's protecting your car, your home, or your family's future, Trevor and his team are right here in Murfreesboro ready to help. So don't just settle for some 1-800 number. Call a neighbor who cares and call Trevor Haggard State Farm today at 615-203-5522. Or visit their website at trevorismyagent.com and let them help you protect what matters most. Trevor Haggard State Farm, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. And like I said, keys, you already touched on one of them, I know for sure. But Caleb, tell me, what are the keys to the game for the Gamecocks on Wednesday night to get a win in Murfreesboro?
Yeah, first off, I got to go with third down efficiency on offense. I think, we do a good job of staying ahead of the chains. We don't give ourselves a ton of third and longs. So the third and shorts we get, we need to convert. Um, I mean, and that's true of any team, right? If you can't convert third downs, you can't win football games. That's just kind of how it goes. Um, and then I'd also say we got to create turnovers. Um, the games that we have played the best, we've created turnovers, and we've created them in bunches. I think I mentioned a little while ago. We in our we have on the season 10 turnovers already. That's with 5 games left. Um, if we can, I think I would say this: if we can create 2 turnovers, I think we win. I think that's the name of the game. This defense is going to create points for the offense in a hurry.
Well, much like Trevor Haggard and his team can be an X factor for you and all of your insurance needs, I want to know from Jax State's perspective, there's obvious answers here as who is an impact player, but who would be an X factor for you guys on Wednesday night?
Well, like you said, the obvious is Cam Cook, but if you're going to go X factor, I got to lean on the defense and look at the secondary. I'm going to look at a guy, Caleb Nix. Had a huge scoop and score uh, 2 weeks ago against Delaware. There was really a big spark in the first half to kind of get the scoreboard going in the right direction. He's a guy who is a really, really talented safety, especially considering he kind of grew up as a quarterback. A little background for everyone. He's Bo Nix's baby brother. Replaced Bo as quarterback in high school. Went to Clemson, that switched to safety, and finally found his way down in here. in Jacksonville, Alabama, and he's become a huge part of the back end of this defense. Um, and like I said, that scoop and score is just kind of an example of the kind of impact he can bring on the field. So I got to go Caleb Nix. I think if he has another big game, I think it's just a shining example of the secondary and what they can do when they're locked in.
Well, thanks again to Trevor Haggard of State Farm for sponsoring our Keys to the Game and X Factor segment of today's episode. Caleb, this is the part of the show where I want to know, and we touched on a lot of what makes this Jacksonville State team so good. For Jacksonville State to get a win on the road Wednesday night, is it just as simple as do what you do best, run the football, play good defense, and you're going to walk out with one of your easier wins this year? Or is there something else existential to that has to happen for them to win?
I mean, I don't think it's ever as simple as, just do what we're good at, because inevitably MTSU's going to be saying the same thing. They need to do what they're good at. And I imagine Derek Mason's going to look at it and say, hey, Nick Vadiato can throw the ball around the yard. If we get passing game going against a secondary that has given up some yards, we're going to start to look at this game and say, hey, MTSU's got a shot to win it. So I'd say it's more, not just do what we're good at, but try to force MTSU into doing what they're not good at.
Well, lastly here, the game is at 6:30 Central Time. I know Jacksonville State also in Central Time, so no need to bring up that old Eastern Time. But it is 6:30 on ESPN2 here in Murfreesboro. The line opened surprisingly low, 5.5. I don't know if that had anything to do with the quarterback situation or not. When we previewed this episode on Friday with Shane, we had predicted it would be around that 9.5, 10. It has started to creep that way, but at the time of recording, it's only at 6.5. Jacksonville State is favored over under 54.5. That's kind of been where a lot of MTSU games have been living this year. Caleb, in your best prediction here, how do you see this game playing out on the scoreboard?
Look, knowing we've gone on the road 5 times this year, I think. I believe I'd have to let me check real quick. We've not performed well on the road. To put it kindly, I think we've lost all but one road game.
Yeah, four road games. One of them was your win against Sam Houston, and that was a 2-point win. But the other 3 were all losses.
Yeah, I mean that, and I don't think it's a coaching thing. I don't think it's I don't think it's these teams are incredible. I just think we're struggling on the road. I just think that's all it comes down to. So while I am going to go Cox on top, I see it pretty close. I'm going to actually go. I'm going to take the under. I'm thinking kind of a 24-21 type game. Field goal late, wins it, stop to close it out type deal. But I don't think it's going to get wide open. I don't see that. I don't see this getting to 50 total. If it does, I think both defenses have had some things go wrong, because that means that Jacksonville State's probably moving the football pretty well through the air, and that probably means that MTSU is running the ball pretty well.
I'm stunned, really, at this last week when we previewed it. We had it going to the over, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that Jacksonville State, we were afraid, might figure some things out, playing, even though a good rush defense. I just think that Cam Cook-Creel duo is tough to stop. I mean, when the guy has the ball in his hand, he like you said, he's a home run hitter. So, Caleb, once again, I appreciate you taking the time to join us this week. Lastly, though, before we hang up the call here, anything you can plug, things that we can expect from 700 Pelham Road for this week's preparation, as well as basketball season is quickly approaching. I know the start of the regular season is next week. Anything we can expect from you guys moving forward?
Yeah. So be on the lookout for the preview blog that is actually being typed up right now as we record this episode. So be on the lookout for a Tuesday morning release. I usually release them at 10 o'clock the day before the game. As for a recap, win or lose, I will do a recap that usually releases either Thursday or Friday after these weekday games. And then if it's a weekend game, like normal, once we get into November, it'll probably be on Mondays and Tuesdays going after that. podcast episodes, unfortunately, as Jake can attest. He knows how busy my work life has been the last several months. So unfortunately, probably no podcast episodes this week. But if I manage to get one in, then I will tweet that out on our account, on our podcast page, and on our Sidelines Twitter page, so that everyone can tune in.
And of course, we'll have all those tagged in our description. If you're listening on YouTube and on Twitter, he'll be tagged in our post there as well for our preview promo. But Caleb, once again, I know you're a busy man. I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you having me.
And thanks to you, the listener, for tuning in today. Thanks to Trevor Haggard and Gold's Gym of Tennessee for sponsoring today's episode. If you're not already following us on social media at Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, at Blue Raider Pod, and on YouTube, if you're not already subscribed, make sure you do so you don't miss another one of our uploads. And specifically for tomorrow's kickoff, we will have our post-game show reaction after the live press conference with Coach Mason, and select player Shane Pickering will be joining us once again to break down the results of tomorrow night's game. But once again, I appreciate you for tuning in, and until next time, go Blue.